Settling into the big house, I found myself somewhere in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, just standing there in the middle of a room, surrounded by people I didn't know. I had no idea how I got there, who I came with, why I was there, or where my shoes were. The environment slowly started coming into focus, almost like I would imagine teleporting myself would be like. I just appeared, became conscious is more like it, out of nowhere. At a house party, I started hearing the music. It was loud and aggressive. Everyone was high on acid. I was standing there barefoot. The next thing you know, literally, is I'm sitting in the passenger side of a car with someone I knew years before from Montreal, Quebec, Danny McLeod. Like, what the fuck? I guess I knew at the time, but I've forgotten how we met up in the first place. And other than Danny explaining to me many years later when we found each other on Facebook, I still wouldn't have a clue. He told me that he'd moved to BC too shortly after I had, and he just happened to end up at the same party as me, all the way across the country. By the way, he didn't know anyone at the party other than me as well. That was the first time, I guess, I realized how small the world really was. I have a fuzzy memory flash of buying cases of kokanee beer, loading up Danny's trunk with kokanee beer. I guess our plan was to bring our friends back home a good beer. Danny said we were homesick, so we hopped in his car with his dog and beer to drive back home to Montreal directly from the party. And at that time, kokanee beer was made and sold only in BC. The last memory flash I have of that trip is passing a road sign that said Indian Head, Saskatchewan, 3 kilometers. I don't remember the ride at all up until then, which was about 1,700 kilometers from where we had started. I do remember seeing the sign and saying to Danny, like fuck, we ain't stopping there. I can't be sure, but it seemed like the same memory flash. It seemed like instantly anyway, after I said that. I saw flashing police lights behind us. All I can see is the lights. The next thing you know, I'm on a prisoner plane, being brought to a provincial women's jail called Pine Grove Correctional Center in Saskatchewan. I can't be sure, but for some reason I think I only stayed there a month or two. For many years I wouldn't know what I'd been charged with. I don't even remember going through court. But today, looking back at my criminal record, I know it was for being in possession of a narcotic, although I'm still not sure for what kind. I have a few memory flashes of Pine Grove Correctional Center. I don't remember streams of events that took place. When I walked into the jail, everyone looked at me. I was 19 years old, blonde hair, and the only white woman for many miles. The rest of the women were native. I didn't want to stare at anyone, but I didn't want to show that I was a scared little girl either. It's a good thing this little system prepared me for a little bit for this. I now see I was raised for it. At meal times, the food was brought from the kitchen, placed on the table, and all the inmates in the wing would just grab a plate and serve themselves. I lost some weight, that's for sure. I made sure I didn't offend anyone by being too greedy, but at the same time, not wanting to look scared. So I took small helpings of whatever was the closest to me. I didn't have any problems while there. Because of my past, I was used to the institution life. But juvenile detention centers were nothing compared to this prison. This was the real deal. Rough-looking women sitting around, some of them with scars running down their faces. Most of them were waiting trial for all kinds of misunderstandings, like prostitution, theft, murder, drugs, robbery, assault. I found myself belonging in a world so full of violence, hatred, misunderstandings. I found myself once again locked behind bars, surrounded by nice people who had turned hard over time. I was home. Tammy Andelonsha, Human Metamorphosis.